downtown.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
I put a bunch of those in this year. I don't have much landscaping.
Out of
I
consideration
love
of Tom's
landscaping,
time,
but
if you
I had to kind of pace
consider
myself on what I wanted
elevating
to
them
do,
up
and so I'm doing more in the back as
to
far as
first
gardening and stuff.
in
which
item number 4,
I like to do, but I
that'd be
never
kind
had a
of
chance to
great.
do it. I was always moving too much or whatever.
I don't know landscaping. My wife
Can we go?
can dig there and I dig there.
yeah, maybe. Well, we'll just futz around. You can
That's
catch up.
wise.
You go right ahead.
So
All right, let's go. All right, go ahead and call the meeting to order. Got a roll call. Let's see. Mike Lodge is not here. Okay, so duly noted. So, okay, good. Everybody here except Councilor Hoffman.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and get going there. Then we got the approval of the November board minutes, item number 3 on your agenda.
I move to approve.
Second.
Got a second from David Ritchie. Anything, questions, comments, adjustments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Got that taken care of. Report agenda. I think we're going to go ahead and take a, is it a GLOGU? Is it?
That's close enough.
Is it?
Glow.
GOW, okay, GOW, okay, that'll work, okay. Come on up, Tom.
Okay.
I guess John is passing out the reports.
Okay.
Well, while he's doing that, if you can send those around, there should be enough of everyone. The sheet that I'm passing around is some information that is excerpted from the audit reports that you've got. Scott, did you get one?
No.
This information is actually on page 5 of the report, but it's easier to look at it at the page that I've got. This is the information I want to give you is a summarized version of what we went over with the Finance Committee on Tuesday. So I'm just hitting some of the more salient points. What you have here is a comparison of basically the profit and loss statement for MINET for the past 2 years. You'll see the revenue is up by a little over 100,000. I put a frowny face there because that means revenue is basically flat. And really what we would like to see is more of an increase in revenue. Personnel services up by about 100,000. And I put a smiley face there. Most of that, almost all of that 100,000 is increase in wages. It's the benefits, insurance, and employee benefit stuff stayed pretty flat. The next one, this is the significant number. The materials and services, including the cost of services sold, so the providers, the data and cable and stuff like that, up by about 300,000. Roughly half of that is the cost of services that were sold. The other portion, there's some increase in advertising. There's some increase in some IT services. Remember, there was a software conversion during the year, which accounted for most of those costs. Depreciation is about the same. Non-operating items are about the same. That's mostly interest paid on debt. And so the change in net position or net profit or loss for 2015 was about $300,000 different from what it was in 2014. Again, most of that due to, half of that due to the cost of services sold. The other portion due primarily to increase in advertising and the software conversion during the year. That's that $300,000 difference basically shows up in, that was the change in cash flow. That's the number that shows up throughout the report in a number of places. So that's what I'm hoping is, as I'm saying this, you're saying, yeah, I knew that. I mean, this is hopefully the information that you've had consistent throughout the year. One other thing that I think is important for the board to know is that in the course of our audit, if there are adjustments that are necessary, we propose those adjustments and ask the client to make them. In this case, there were no audit adjustments. The numbers that basically John gave us are the numbers that appear in that report, and that's a gold star for John and Mark. And it basically means they're doing a good job keeping the books straight. So that's, again, very summarized view of what's happened. Don, did I miss anything important that the board needs to know?
Not so as I could say no. Thank you, Tom.
Okay. I'd be glad to entertain any questions that anyone has.
Anything else you want to point out from the document, that you think that takes care of it?
No, that's, if you know this, you know the essential content of what the report says.
Tom, do you work with management at all to determine what face you put on there?
No, that's my determination, and it's somewhat arbitrary and capricious. Thank you for mentioning that, John. The purpose.
Now, Tom, per auditing rules, you actually do have control of that. You can't be influenced.
That's right, I'm independent in that regard. I put those icons there not so much to indicate that something is good or there's a problem, but to spur someone's thinking. Usually what happens is that you could make an argument that something could either be a smiley face or a frowny face. Take the revenue, for example. If you were anticipating a decrease in revenue, but what you had was things flat, that would be a smiley face. On the other hand, if you were anticipating an increase of 20%, you were looking for an increase of 400,000, and all you got was 100,000, it would be a frowny face. And so, again, the purpose of the icon is not to give it a grade, but to promote, I guess, stimulate your thinking and say, would I have given that a smiley face? Would I have given that a frowny face? Going forward to next year, am I happy if we do the same thing, or do I want to see changes? So the purpose is thought-provoking, not grade assessing.
Got her? Okay. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. You guys, question for the board? You want to accept the audit, or you want to plan to look at it and do the subsequent meeting?
Well, you know, we're dealing with an organization that's $4.5 million in revenues, and we have an audit that we've looked at for 2 minutes. Either we need to have this in advance, so we can, we can cogitate on it and be prepared to ask questions while Tom is available. Or we need to determine whether or not we need to bring him back should we have subsequent questions.
If I may interject, please, with all due respect to the board, just to clarify, the audit is primarily a compliance process. It's required by the debt service agreement, and it's to give assurance to the governance structure of MINET that, in fact, the financial records and the information presented to you throughout the fiscal year, in fact, is accurate in all material respects and can be relied upon. And I think the statement made by Tom certainly confirms that.
Well, I think that's true. If we, now, I have no training or background in accounting, so most of this is just numbers to me. We've hired this individual to tell us we're in compliance and the sheets are accurate and quickly reflect that. Personally, I don't need time to ruminate on this because it means so very little to me other than an assurance from somebody we hired that everything is as it seems. So I'd be comfortable with voting on it right now. At some point, we have to draw the line on how many people we want to have assurance that the last person is giving us true and accurate information.
Okay. Others? Oh, please.
I might remind the board that the review of the audit was assigned to the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee did meet with Tom and did review the audit, and I believe it was the Finance Committee that, by consensus or by vote, I don't recall, wished that the audit be brought to the board with their nod that it was met their.
Correct.
That's new information right there. They've not had that, they've not provided that input yet, so that's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I have a process, and that's also brand new, that we actually have a finance committee, and that would be one of their duties. I think the board wasn't aware that that would be done. So I think that's a good point.
There was several meetings back that we did that, that's coming as a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I
to me.
mean,
Well-
when we put the charter together and you guys reviewed it, it's clearly, more than clearly delineated in the charter for the audit committee as one of their core responsibilities.
Yeah.
And I think it was new that they gave the nod of yes, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
with the report
in all due respect, I know that you guys aren't that familiar with financial audits. I grew up in this, but this is not like a management audit where they're coming in to advise or comment on management's performance. I think the key acid test, with all due respect, is if John came in here, or Tom, excuse me, and said, yeah, we did the audit, and guess what? We found 16 areas in which we had to make audit adjustments to get your financial records straight. That would indicate two things. Number one, John and I are not fulfilling our duties and responsibilities as we should be, and therefore the information that we're providing to you throughout the fiscal year that you may act on in terms of making decisions with can't be relied upon appropriately because it's been inaccurate. And I think the fact that they audited our financial records and said, they're clean, you guys did a great job, should give assurance to the board that the information that we're providing you financially that you may use to act upon, you can do that with confidence. And that's kind of the beginning and the end of the audit.
Okay, based on those statements, I would move that we accept the audit.
I second it.
Jerry, was that you who
Yes.
seconded?
As an ORS 190, these are required by state. This is given to, copies of this are given to the state, correct?
Yeah, we have to file.
We file with the audit
Right.
division, correct.
Yeah, we have a duty to do that, correct.
Along with the, of course.
With the Oregon, I think it's the Oregon Department of Revenue, I believe, is the
It's the, yeah,
Government
audit
agency.
division of the Oregon
Yep.
Department of Revenue. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Yep. And I would make a note, I think, Mark, one thing that is different than just do that, and number one, we have multiple people on the board here that are familiar with financials, so it's not really an accurate statement when you make that. There's also an educational element, people asking questions, getting familiar, it's a way to dive in a little bit, get a feel for the operation, so there is a benefit besides just saying they were done correct.
Okay. I've done this for over 30 years. I have a pretty good background.
Yeah, I've been doing it for
You
about 30 years
probably
too,
do.
Mark.
You
So,
probably do.
yeah.
But let's look what just happened.
What just happened?
Tom came in, this goes down, we look at this for 30 seconds, he provides his, I'm sure accurate, I've got full confidence in Tom, a cryptic stamp of approval. There's a 2-page letter here that basically says that, we were given no opportunity to even read. And while I'm sure and confident that the finance committee who, dove in on this, we've not heard from the finance committee as to whether they accepted it actually or not, other than Don's assertion that they have. I'm sure they have. It's about, to me, it's about process. It's about a reasonable flow. I don't have any concerns about the audit, but if somebody asked, how do you feel about the audit that was presented at the meeting, I would say, well, everybody seemed to think it was okay. I didn't get a chance to read it. So anyway, I'm done. I won't go back and revisit it.
Comment, Buzz.
Scott, if I just make a suggestion or a note for the board, is that process-wise, I think we could have eased some of the concern had we flipped things and had we had a finance report prior to the audit being presented. Had we looked at that process, I'm not sure we could have alleviated concerns, because I understand, the need of looking at and processing it through. But I think that we could have alleviated some of the concerns, and so I would just suggest that you put notes for in the future that have the finance committee make a presentation prior to the audit being presented. It may help as far as process is concerned.
Yeah, and one thing I was just thinking too, just so we did have in advance, kind of like our financials, we talked about flipping into the finance committee and the board at the same time. This document should have went out to us in advance. And so if we would have got it last week or whenever it was ready, then we could have taken a look at it.
We can certainly make
Yeah,
that adjustment.
yeah, just make the adjustment next year and just, we'll be fine. Yep. Anything else? Okay, now I guess we'll go to financials.
Actually, Buzz, I think I was up
Oh, you're up?
just
Yeah.
before you, yeah.
Just loosening my back.
Good morning. First of all, I want to start off by saying that the financial report that you guys received this month is slightly different than past financial reports that you've received. It is a truncated version. The reason why that we have presented that to you is, and if you'd like us to go back to the old way of presenting, that's fine, but the Finance Committee had actually requested that they receive what you are receiving now during the off months, and then every quarter receive the full financials to really dive into the detail of them, rather than diving into the detail on kind of a stable business as it is every month. So if you guys could just give us a little bit of feedback on whether or not you like this format. It's pretty much the commentary on all of our financial statements. We've included the profit and loss with the trending graphs, and then we also included a copy of the balance statement. But if you guys would like the other information, the more detailed information comparing to the budget and the cash flow statements and everything, then we'd be happy to provide that for you. We do produce those every month, so it's not like we're not producing them anyway. It's just a matter of what you guys want to see. As far as the financials are concerned, everything is really stable and flat. We actually dropped down from kind of our elevated levels in revenue last month because of those non-cash transactions that I brought up. But we dropped down to normal levels in revenue. At the same time, we didn't have the damages paid out on the expense side of things. Pretty much this was a very, very, very normal month. There wasn't really any outstanding payments or anything, except for we did finish paying off the audit of about $3,400. The only other area that I would like to point out to you is on the balance statement. Due to the refinance of the debt service loans, we did have to reallocate some funds that were due to penalties and interest that hadn't been paid out, accrued interest that needed to be paid out. There were some fees tacked on to the top of the loans that we kind of had to account for, and so there's definitely some changes on the balance sheet. If you'd like me to, I can definitely explain those further at a later time, but for time purposes, I just kind of want to keep that short. It was kind of out of our control, and the two cities were in control of that, and we just had to deal with the fees. And they are very reasonable fees, I'd like to say.
I just wanted to elaborate, is that when both cities did refinancing, it changed the spread. You know, we got the June payment, the December payment. It used to be really heavy in December, then lighter in June, and now we're more leveled up. So one thing I think the board could use, maybe just for perspective, is when we get everything reloaded on what the new schedules are, and the kind of summary of everything, that'd be good.
You'd like to see an amortization schedule of the
yeah, and just so we know
payments,
when the hits are now, how they spread
I
during
think we're
those two
real
cycles.
close to having that all
Yeah,
together right
we
now.
have that model. I
Yeah.
just need to sit down with both Gloria and Mark first and make sure
Yeah.
they.
And there's a
make
lot
sure
of,
that
there's a
they
lot
approve
of loops, particularly I know in ours, we had escrow accounts and payoffs and different.
You did, right, yeah.
So it's, this one's a little odd, it'll get.
Well, both
leveled out,
cities
yeah.
took a slightly different approach. One did an early payoff, one didn't do an early payoff. Yeah.
Right, yeah, so it'll shake a little bit this year, but.
How about next meeting? We'll be more prepared next meeting if you'd like to.
Next meeting, yeah, that's fine, if it's ready. Yeah.
We'll have it for your next meeting then.
Yeah, whenever you get it, you don't push it.
So if there's no further questions on the financials?
Anything, anybody?
Good. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay. Certain buyers.
Oh, and actually, appreciate the opportunity to be here representing the Finance Committee. And some of the things you've already heard, so it'll be a little bit of a regurgitation. One of the things we began looking at, meeting as a Finance Committee, looking at all the financials in great depth, and a couple of things that was relatively obvious to us as we were going through is that, you know, when you look at the graphs, you look at other things, things are pretty flat. And, you know, we were finding ourselves discussing really minute little details that tended to be, you know, seasonal issues, whether it was the university was not open or whatever it was. And at that point in time, we as a committee made a determination that what we really wanted to do was we wanted to make an in-depth dive every quarter and then get that summary. And so we worked with the management team to develop the summary that you received today. And that is the one that we normally go through meeting-wise every quarter. And of course, next month is the quarter meeting where we'll deep dive into it with the entire report again. But every quarter we see that. I can tell you that we're, I think you would be pleased and certainly would invite you anytime that you would like to join us, to join the Finance Committee as we meet. We've kind of changed location. We're meeting at the Henry Hill Education Center now, the third Tuesday of every month at 1:30, and there's plenty of room. And I think you would be really encouraged by the level of discussion and the depth of discussion and the way that the group is operating. I think it's operating very, very well. One of the things that we were talking, many things we talked about yesterday, and I know some of it's going to be presented to you today, and I would certainly encourage, and the committee fully endorses the things that Don is going to be talking to you about today as he makes his presentation, and we'd like to move those things forward because we think that what we are looking at, and I don't know, and I would certainly encourage you, if you haven't looked at it, to ask for the study recently that Hillsborough went through. You know, Hillsborough was contemplating doing the same thing that we are doing. And when Hillsborough came to the discussion to not do it, or the decision to not do it, they came to that decision based on the fact that they felt that it was on the fence as to whether or not it was viable or not viable, and they made a decision to not do it. And we felt like there would be some great information in there if we could get it. We did get it. We've looked at it some. We haven't dived in it in depth. We're going to be diving into it depth next month. The reason we deferred it to next month is what we know that there's some discussion going on here with the board, and we don't want to do something just for the sake of doing it, so we go back and have to relook at it in a different lens. And so we want to, hopefully that the board will help us define the lens that we look for, we want to look through it for, or look for through it, whatever I want to say. I think you know what I mean. But as I look through it, here's some of the things I talked about. You'll notice that there's 10 or 11 cities that are mentioned in there, and it's from cities I've never heard. I didn't know that, I thought Cleveland was in Ohio, but Cleveland actually is in Tennessee. And there's a great group of cities that have this type of service provided to their group right now. And a couple of things that I've uncovered and I disclosed to the board, or excuse me, to the committee, and we're going to have good discussion about those, that I think it really is important to see that really MINET, the company itself, is operating very soundly and at a high level of efficiency compared to other programs throughout the country. As you look at those communities and you check the demographics, and what I did is I went to one source, and I went to the source of the census, and I used the census demographics to compare the cities. And here's one of the things I can tell you. We're sitting with a capacity rate, depending on how you want to measure it, around 60% saturation in our area. Significantly higher, in most cases double that of any of the other communities that are involved in this type of a programming. But when you look at the communities, here's one of the things you find. I compared population. So Cleveland, Tennessee, as an example, is around 40,000 in population. But when you look at Sallisaw, Oklahoma, or you look at some of the other cities that are mentioned in the study, you'll find that you have, of the group, 5 of them have a population around 18 to 20,000. And of course, if you combine Monmouth and Independence, we're right at that 18 to 20,000 capacity. I also checked to find out how does it work as far as minority and non-minority population. Well, we're right at the top or in the averages as far as those cities are concerned. I checked with regards to stability, and I used married families as a stability factor. And again, found that there was a real strong comparison with the group. There was a really interesting thing that was glaring to me, and I think it's important to help us understand where MINET is and how effectively it is in fact operating, and that's this. As you look at most of the cities that you're looking at, you're seeing a population density somewhere between 800 to 1,200 people per square mile. Okay? Again, coming from the same census demographics, you'll see that the population in Independence per square mile is 3,500, and I'm rough in my numbers, but somewhere near 3,500 people per square mile. And in Monmouth, it's about 4,200. Average-wise, about 3,700. So 2 or 3 times the density of some of these other areas. If you look into that number, you're then talking about, obviously, multiple dwellings, multiple site dwellings, a different comparison as far as what's available, what's not available, different comparison about the level of usage, non-level of usage. And I think when you look at those things, the reality is that to have MINET operating at a 60% or close to a 60% saturation rate is really about the maximum level. That, in turn, is supported by the financials, because what are all the graphs? They're flat. You know, they're flat. Now, loss, no gain. Whatever gains we do get, there's loss. So it's really kind of a flat situation. And then that the fact that the financials are soundly supported by what we can see through the audit. Again, we're confident that we have a management team in MINET that's operating very efficiently at this point. That leads us to then, how do we get to beyond this point? How do we get that flat line to increase? And I think that from a finance committee point of view, though we don't have the recommendation that we would like to give to the board, we believe that we will have at least 2 recommendations, possibly a third, to give to the board in a short period of time. We have to look at different ways of increasing. It's very simple for us to look and say, well, we're saturated at 60% and this is happening, so let's go to 80%. Well, that's great to do, but I would say it'd be comparable to me. You know, I weigh, as of this morning, I can tell you, like 299.8 pounds. I'd like to weigh about 250. It's easy for me to say I'd like to weigh 250 next month. But no matter what I would try to do, for me to get down to 250 pounds is going to be an act of God and Congress. God first, because Congress can't do a dang thing for me.
For anybody else.
Or anybody else. So I think you have to look at that in relationship. And so now the idea is we have a sound base. The history, you know, history is a wonderful thing. And I certainly agree with the fact that if you don't study history, you're bound to relive it. I absolutely understand that component of it. I also understand the point, if you dwell in history, you're never going to grow. And so while I think our history is important, I think the fact that we have a solid base right now, at least this is the, and members, you know, we have members of the committee here that can either scowl at me and kick me, or...
Well, I'd like to add one comment.
Go ahead.
When you're done, I just got one thing I'd like to bring up the buzz
You
survey.
should introduce Ken to the group, because I'm not sure of the whole.
Well, I thought we did the last time, but we will, okay. And so, you know, I think that we're certainly in support of the fact we need to look for new ways if we're going to move that line up, you know. And so Don has talked about whether you call them bolt-ons or add-ons or things of that nature that can help us, but that will increase our capacity. You know, I think that certainly the Hillsborough study supports what we've all heard, and that is that video is not overly profitable. Voice is disappearing, and it's data. Data is the tool. And so I do believe that you know, the committee is in a good space. I know right now we're simply looking for, you know, a reset or a revalidation from you as far as the direction. Okay. Now, Ken Day is one of the new members of the finance committee. And Ken, what would you like to add?
Well, I think, first of all, a little background, but not a lot. One of my specialties was I was kind of a person that turned around companies, took non-profitable companies and made them profitable. I worked for a company in Portland called Blunt International. Anyway, one company I went to, they had lost $1.2 million when I took over and replaced the president. Nobody on the floor, none of the workers knew they lost them $1.2 million. So there I am, I'm the bad guy, replacing this guy that had been there for 25 years, and they didn't know why. And then when I explained it to them, they were all shocked. I want to make sure, I think it's really important that you realize, you've got, in my opinion, pretty good management right now. And this thing's stable, okay? It's stable, but if something doesn't change, it won't stay stable. It will go down. So that 1.4 million or whatever it is that they contribute every year to the interest and principal, it isn't going to be there that much longer. I look at, this Hillsborough report was pretty interesting. But what was it? It said that, oh, here it is. This over-the-top, which is through the over-the-top services for TV, which is like antennas and that kind of stuff. It's become a material substitute for traditional cable TV, and they estimate that in the next year, 10% of the TV users were going to be converting over to over-the-top and away from cable TV, satellite TV, and all that. 10% in 1 year. That's pretty significant. And the other one, and I probably won't be able to find it now, I've circled it, but it was a little bit tough, was this direct line. I got to find this for you, because it's just an amazing statistic.
It's in the back of the page.
I can't remember where it is. Anyway, it's the number of people, here it is. This is great. This is so, I'm old, okay? I mean, I'm older. And it's so true on some of these things. People without wireless phone service by age. Just what percentage would you think of? 25 to 34. How many people, these people have homes, apartments, or whatever, that don't have a hard line? The answer is 78%. So then you look at my age, 65 to 74, 25%. Okay, so, and it just goes in, it's a straight line almost by age. So that direct line thing's going away. So you can, if you look at, think about the triad. Unfortunately, Trump didn't know what a triad was, but anyway, if you look at the triad for what MINET is, it's phone, it's video, it's data. Phone's going down, video's going down, data's where it's going to be at, and if you don't do something, the whole thing's going to go down. And you just got to. If you want to even maintain where you're at today, you've got to take steps. Don's come up with some ideas, and the finance committee, you've looked at it, but it's primarily Don and Mark. They've done a good job, and that's all I got to say. I just want to tell you that I think you've got a great little company. I'd love to invest in it if you didn't have a big debt against it. Okay. Other than that, I think it's a great company, and it's a great opportunity. And I really agree with what, who's the representative? What's his name?
Paul Evans?
Yeah, Paul Evans. I really agree with what Paul Evans has to say about MINET and what it'll do to for this company and this community. It's amazing. You got a good partner in Paul Evans. And that's it. Thank you.
And the other thing I would add to that situation is video is going down as we know video is going down. But the amount of video that's being seen and used, not nearly. It's going to data. It's going to data. That younger group is not using cable, is not using satellite. It's going to streaming through Hulu and Netflix and all those various agencies right there. And so you're kind of seeing what's happening to video right now is comparable to what happened, in my estimation, to some of you are probably not old enough to remember records in 45, you know.
33 and a third.
33, so 78, you know. But those are a thing of the past. And it's now music is done in a significantly different way. Many more billions of dollars being spent on music than were spent in the past, but doing it in a different way. So those that morphed to the new way are doing very, very well, and those that did not, you know, are struggling. And as a finance committee, I think where we're at is that we're comfortable, if the board is comfortable with us providing you some suggestions as to how we believe that what is currently a very well-run company can become even a greater asset to the community.
Buzz, how much of this information are you sharing with marketing? Pardon? How much of this information are you sharing with marketing? Because a lot of what you're talking about today are marketing issues.
Well, there's dual marketing issues, okay? And when I say dual marketing issues, I would suggest to you in this fashion. There is local marketing, or marketing for the services that we currently provide. That's one type of marketing. And the second type is in the wholesale or other, the add-on type of marketing. And what we have done is we've shared all this information with all the management team at MINET. So sales has been involved in the meetings, senior management is involved in the meetings, and finance has been involved in the meetings. So they've all been there, and one of the things that you would see about the group, it's really kind of interesting. A group of individuals who are not afraid to speak their piece. Did you say that, Alan?
That's true.
Not afraid to speak their piece, but all seem to be speaking the piece together. I mean, it's, you know, I think there's been a time before you use the old model of all the arrows. I'm a science guy, so, you know, I look at vectors, you know, and if I take all those vectors and I add them together, I'm just going off here and I'm gaining great things. If I take those same vectors and I add them and subtract them and multiply them, I can put 10 times growth in a little tiny bowl or a little tiny circle because they're adding and subtracting from one another. What I see in the finance committee right now is we have some folks who are vector capable as far as advancing things are concerned, and they're beginning to align. And I see that alignment happening more and more every meeting. And that's why I believe that given the proper tools and proper support, that we will be able to make a viable recommendation to you.
But it's not the finance committee that's doing it. It's Don and his team that are doing it, and all we're doing is kind of helping and making suggestions. And you guys will be doing the same exact thing. You'll hear it and you'll say, you know, that's another thought. So that's good. There's nothing wrong with that.
Questions from anyone?
I actually just wanted to point one thing out to you, that I've been very pleased with how the finance committee has been going this time around. While Buzz is saying that everybody has had no problem voicing their opinion, I think the problem in the past was not listening. And this time around, people are listening. Everybody's listening to each other, and the dynamic is really developing well, I think. Just wanted to add that.
Right.
That's good to hear, because it always seems like the opposite of talking is waiting to talk.
Yep. Exactly.
If I might add something, Mr. Chairman? Yeah. I think that this is a good time to say what, if I could state this for the Finance Committee, it's my takeaway from them, and it's also my impression as well, which may mean why it's my takeaway from them. And it really comes down to much of what you were speaking to earlier, John Kerry, and that is that the Finance Committee is looking for direction from the board on what is the process and the procedures associated with that process that they should follow and whose role is whose. As we develop possible opportunities to end this flatlining, because we do know, in reality, we have virtually penetrated the available market in our traditional product suite. We have to look at other opportunities. We tend to have the cart before the horse. We tend to have the Finance Committee before the board, when in fact, Finance Committee is looking at the board to say, when do you want us to bring something to you, and in what fashion do you want us to bring it to you? And that's going to be part of what my report is going to get into.
Anything else?
I just want to say I really appreciate your comments about history. It doesn't do any good to focus on the past. You can't do a lot about that, I think. So,
But you need to remember the past.
You do need to remember it. That's exactly right. It's like John said, you know, people are listening now.
Yeah.
So I think it doesn't do any good to try to put it together, you know, the past, but just learn from it, I guess.
I had an
That's what I'm
experience
saying.
when I was in Hermiston. I ended up being on the Umatilla County Fair Board, and it came in after the fair had, oh my God, the fair over there is $1 million fair. It's 120,000 people in a 4-day period. It's a heck of a big thing. It's got also the Farm City Pro Rodeo tied in it. When I first became chairman of the board, the rodeo and the Fair Board didn't talk to one another. Even though they're running simultaneous events, even though part of the ticketing, one gets them into another, there was no conversation. And it was, and the whole reason was, as we sit there, well, 10 years ago, this is what happened, and so-and-so, upset so-and-so, I forgot we're on TV. Upset so-and-so, and on and on and on. Finally, I looked down and said, fellas, here's the advantage I got. I wasn't here 10 years ago. I'm not upset about that. What I'm concerned about is how are we going to make this fair stay alive and grow? And while we need to understand so that we don't retread in those things, what I heard is that the reason we didn't talk to one another is because this group would go off on their own and do something. This group would go off on their own and do something. Here again, the vectors were going in different directions. All we did is change it and say, so what do you guys want to do? You know, and can we do that? Yeah, we can do that. Let's do that together. If we do it together, we can do it for half the cost, et cetera, et cetera. And we grew substantially and had some great growth. We always were very cognizant of the history, but that cognizance allowed us to not revisit it. So I'm very excited and hopefully looking forward to the direction that Don's talking about. Appreciate the opportunity to report to you. Now I have to go do my day job.
Go to work.
See you guys.
Managers reports. Jason.
Morning. I have a few quick notes about over-the-top services and phone. I talked last month about TV Everywhere. Don and I looked at there hasn't been a whole lot of options for us, but the few options we've had, we looked at streaming services or over-the-top services for MINET. The only one we truly had available for us was TV Everywhere. It's not a standalone product. You have to subscribe to our services to get the streaming content for those services. Don, we're good on that. We have an agreement with NCTC. So that should launch hopefully early next year. And the reason for that is to retain the customers we have, who maybe instead of cutting the cord will stay with us because we do have the streaming services. And as far as phone, I've got a list of current MINET customers without our phone service with an 837, an 838, or a 606 number. That means potentially they have phone service through CenturyLink or Charter. We're going to call every one of those customers, try to get as many as we can over to MINET. Some of those numbers may be ported out to phone numbers, to phone companies, or mobile phone companies, but that's going to be our big push beginning of next year to retain customers or keep customers, keep the loss system going, because January and February, money's tight, that's usually where we see a little bit of a dip in services. Speaking of that, or onto this, the disconnects report, this one looks different than the past because you'll notice that usually moving out of the area is right around 40–45%. It's down to 30%. You'll notice that non-pays are up almost to 30%. Service not needed and money and price increased slightly. So you see the curve there as people are, the money's tight, they're getting rid of services, they don't need the services. Otherwise, the report, as far as the numbers, are pretty standard. It's just a percentage shift. And like I said, the non-pay, although it's high, we usually, John, what's the number that we usually get back?
I think I saw a report in there, about 70%. I said that's pretty accurate.
It's
about 70%.
Pretty high. We'll lose them one month, we'll get them back. I mean, it's just like this cycle of people who every month non-paying get reconnected back. So it's just, yeah. Any questions on that one?
Hearing none? Hearing none?
Yeah, okay. Next one is the services report. Last month we gained 32 services. If you compare that to last year at this time, last year's number was a little different because that's when we first transitioned into our new billing system. So not the numbers are off, but they're going to be a little different. So to compare to last year, there's really no true comparison. Going forward, the comparisons will be closer. So the new billing system, we cleaned up products. It was a mess. John, is that safe to say?
I'm still dealing with it.
Yeah, they're just.
Yep,
So.
it was a mess.
But 32, that's pretty standard, especially for that time of year with all the non-pays and stuff. Lost 2 cable customers, that's not bad. I mean, we've been gaining them for a while, but. Any questions on that one? Next one is some graphs, which I've included, and this just shows you to actual services to budgeted services. As you can see on the bottom one, that we really stopped that dip in the summer, which has been a goal of mine for a long time, which is nice. I mean, you can tell we just kind of remain almost flat, a little bit of steadiness, but we dropped that dip, which really helped us in the summer to make some money and retain them. If you see in the report of disconnects, you'll see that instead of having a long drain of losses, we only had 2 months where we lost services, and it wasn't a lot compared to the past. So,
Which is
Those
particularly.
losses are entirely to students.
yeah.
Entirely the students. It was
Yeah.
pretty much a drop off from the amount that WU reported to us as far as how many dorms would be open over the summer. And that we have to drop that down, and that's pretty much the drop.
Yeah, the revenue. They tell us basically how many students will be there during the summer. We charge them for that many students, and it's usually, how much was it this year? Was it an $8,000 drop a month?
Somewhere between 7 and 8.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
The more we get penetrated into this market, the more we have to have an equal focus on retention as we do on acquisition. And anything they can do, including with the college students in the summer months, is only an aspect of it, but anything that we can do to hang on to what we've already earned is going to allow us to avoid the loss of the revenue that Ken Day was referring to just earlier, simply by attrition. It's not only go out, get what remains, go out and find new products and services, but keep what we have. It's a triad of things we gotta be doing, all with equal effort, all on a daily basis.
And Don, since he's been here, he's been the first manager who's, you know, I would go in the summer and say, hey, let's do something for these students. Let's keep, instead of losing them entirely, let's get a little bit of income out of them while they're gone. Or, and Don's been the first manager who's completely, this year, I think, in May, it's like, what are we gonna do for the students? So, last 2 years we've been doing that for the students, and it's really paid off. This year, they're like, well, what can you do for me if I keep my services on and come back? So, that's really helped. Any other questions? Concerns? All right, thanks.
Two reports. IT Field Department Services reports, very brief. Remediation is continuing and is expected to be completed within the next roughly 10 days to 2 weeks. We're now following, we're at that point toward the finish line that we're following a Gantt chart that tells us exactly where we're at any given time on complete remediation of what we initially identified that we needed to do. The other point that PJ wanted me to make to the board was that the weather this year, unlike last year, is cooperating, and we haven't had any unexpected outages as a result of acts of God, which means we haven't had any unexpected associated expenses. Fixing act of gods is an extremely expensive process for us. And it's, we are not able to insure ourselves against this kind of thing. It's going to be something at this point in time that we're always going to have to eat. The cost of insurance, the few places that we can insure ourselves against this is a higher premium than any expense we've ever incurred in the history of the company. So, it's a big deal when it happens, and it's a big deal when it doesn't happen. That would move, unless you have questions for those two departments?
I have one
Yes, sir.
relative to the field service, IT field services department. This came up and it jogged my, in a conversation with a constituent, I guess you would say. And it sort of jogged my memory, and so I want to go back and, because I don't think I could provide the answer that I felt like I should. The question was, how long does it take our staff, our field service staff, to go from, you know, we've got an order for services, how long does it take, and I understand there's a couple different ways to get there. How long does it take to get that person live?
Turned up.
Turned up.
So there's a number of variables that
Sure.
apply to that.
Sure.
If we've had service there before, Jason, maybe you could help me out with
Yeah.
this.
If we've had service there before, it's 24 hours. If they call and say, we'd like internet, you've had it there 3 months ago, we say within 24 hours, just as a courtesy, usually it's on the same day. If they need new conduit, never had service there, that's a 10-day wait for the conduit. The install is usually on the 11th day. Any other install, as far as an aerial new install, they're adding a service, that's usually within this time of the year, 1 or 2 days, usually 3 to 5 days.
Say that again, like above ground sort of a deal?
Yeah, yeah. If it's a new house that needs an aerial install, that's usually 3 to 5 days.
And what are the variables on that?
That'd be one that, say, they've had service there, but they want to add a brand new one. So, i.e. phone service, internet service, cable service. So if you called and wanted to add a service you've never had before, that would require rolling a truck. And that can be done within 3 to 5 days. And that's an average over the year, because this time of year it's 1 or 2 days. In September, it's 1 to 2 weeks with all the college kids coming back. So.
Right. Sure. And the weight on the conduit is just one, because there's much more involved with, you gotta dig the ditch, you gotta put the conduit.
We're engaging a contractor.
Yeah, we've got a
Oh,
contractor,
yeah,
so, yeah.
So that's it.
And they usually do it right on the 10th day. So they come, I think, once a week and do conduit here.
That's expensive too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mount West. But a lot of the new builds in Monmouth and Independence, we're putting our own conduit in before they're built. Edwards Addition, the 8th Street, I mean, all those, we've got conduit in the ground already. So this would be a house that was built prior to MINET, yeah.
And I think it's related, again, a question from a constituent that I feel like I've asked it before and I've forgotten it, what the response was. With the addition of more apartments, multi-family dwelling places, that we're hooking up to, you know.
Okay.
And how many, for argument's sake, we've got 20 units, how many, and the scenario that the person provided me was, we've got 20 units, and included in the monthly fee that the owner charges is, you know, like MINET access or basic cable or something like that.
Offering managed services to his tenants.
How many bills do they get for those 20 lines, and then how do they work if the occupant wants to up, you know, they want to go over full meal deal as opposed to basic? I mean, I just don't know how that works.
Can I speak to on the billing side?
Yeah.
Basically, it's the landlord would receive one bill for the base services, and then each individual tenant would sign up for additional services,
Okay.
and they would have their own bill just for those additional services.
And so the kids then, or whoever it is, then they have that direct relationship with you guys.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we do have a lot of tenants with their own
Yeah.
accounts.
Yeah, okay, great. That's what I recall the answer was, but that reaffirms what I thought.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
You've done?
I-
Sure. Okay. Now to the general manager's report. You have in your possession the report that MINET is somewhere in, and I want to apologize for the discombobulation of the board packets. We were working on them as late as 7:25 this morning, and we luckily, fortunately, got stuck behind a school bus coming over here with flashing red lights, and because it had city plates on it, I didn't want to pass it like I normally would in my personal car. All right. You have in your possession, or somewhere on this table, a report that MINET delivered to both city councils for the month of December. In the November city council report, we discussed penetration. In the December
I'm
report,
not sure where that
we don't
is.
have that.
Yes.
I thought I saw it.
Did we?
Yeah, because I've just got the,
We did not include the council reports in this packet, and we can send them to the board afterwards.
I rescind what I said. Okay. You don't have it, but we'll get them to you. In December, we, if you had it, you would note that we addressed attrition and service trends. Today, I'd like to address efficiency and effective use of both staff and board and committee times. And first of all, I'd like to ask, much of this is really to hopefully for you to take into your discussion agenda, okay? Question I would like you to ask is, do the board members have any objection if in the future I deliver the reports on behalf of the CSR sales, which would be Jason's report, IT and field services, which would essentially be PJ's reports, certainly not the financials. This would change the current practice of having personnel take time out of their busy schedules each month to come and deliver in person a written report that's already included in your board packet. This would not apply if we had something out of the norm that I think they should be on hand to address anticipated questions. I understand that in the past the staff has attended meetings to be on hand to answer your questions. I'd be happy to carry back when it's just mundane, regular day-to-day business, I'd be happy to carry back to my staff any questions or comments you have with their written reports. I encourage you to continue refining what kind of information you want to see in staff reports so that we may deliver to you anything that you need for capturing the big picture of MINET. Effective and efficient use of the board time.
why don't you stop there?
Sure.
We'll let you take that one pieces. So, comments, questions? So right now we have a full suite of people coming. Don's proposing that just he covers the reports. And
Sounds fine by me, because we do.
I'm
get
agree with that too.
reports.
Yeah.
There's a better way they can use their time in favor of that.
Sure.
Good. Looks like a consensus. So
Thank you very much.
proceed along.
Not that we don't like the guys.
Yeah.
We don't like seeing them.
But they never bring donuts.
I was gonna get to that.
Yeah. You did last time.
I know.
What's wrong?
Well, I thought we passed that
Your
up.
wife didn't give you an allowance?
That's right.
Effective and efficient use of the board's time, you the board. We're all here to work for the success and benefit of MINET. The cities have charged this board with MINET's governance. I believe we are all interested in seeing the governance be effective, well-considered, and far-reaching. As a board, you need solid input from MINET management to assist in making decisions that will have significant impact on the future and income of MINET. As the general manager, I look to the board for true guidance, for its blessing of necessary action steps, and for tangible support in the communities in the larger areas that MINET serves and may intend to serve in the future. My management team will continue to do its best to create MINET's roadmap in the near and far terms. We will need your careful consideration of that roadmap, but also your timely endorsement or redirection. Some issues may need particular rapid responses to take advantage of short-term opportunities. I would respectfully ask the board members to consider the following points that apply to you, the board. And I want to reemphasize one phrase in there, and that's respectfully ask. What are your board, you as the board, what are your priorities? How do you feel you as a board is doing? Is this the time to consider a true refocus of purpose and your process for that purpose? Once your governing guidance is in hand, we will again do our best to plot MINET in the directions you have mandated and approved. As an example, with the Finance Committee, which, based on its governance, I'm still kind of reeling over the fact that the ball was dropped, and I'll certainly take credit for dropping the ball, that the Finance Committee did not inform the board that they had dug into the audit report and had suggested their approval. I'm just flabbergasted that that whole process didn't transpire to everybody's expectations. I really am. But with that being said, there's a number of items that we're looking at in detail because I believe the governance of the Finance Committee asked for the Finance Committee to review certain ideas, concepts for the future growth of MINET, especially now understanding our penetration rates, and then bringing them to the board. Currently on the table is a project that we're looking at with the Grand Ronde Tribe. Currently on the table is a project that we're, a number of projects that we're dealing with the state of Oregon. And I'm deliberately not getting into the details of these because the press is here. We're dealing with a couple of very significant projects with Western Oregon University. We're doing remediation such that we can attract federal clients as well as local and state clients. There's been discussion about a purchase service model as a community service, but also as a tool by which we might address some of the debt shortfall. And always on the table is Polk County in Dallas. Wholesale services, getting some wireless out to them, getting some backbone out to them, they getting some backbone out to us. Those are some of the types of things that the Finance Committee is, Ken, correct me if I'm wrong here, is anxious to have MINET and staff bring them the details for them to discern whether or not these are projects we might wish to move forward with. But one of the things that I've pushed back on the Finance Committee a little bit with is I'm not comfortable that I have the board's suggestion, direction that we should be moving in that direction, taking it to the Finance Committee, because I do that for a number of reasons. One, it's appropriate that you give us the direction that we should follow. That's your charge. The other is I'm not going to put staff through the amount of, burn up the level of resources required to provide the Finance Committee with the data that they need to munch it, to present a valid recommendation to you, the board, if it's not something the board wants us to be doing in the first place. It's just a complete circle of wasting time. So once your governing guidance is in hand, we will do our best to pilot MINET in the directions you have mandated and approved. My staff is extremely capable of managing the details, leaving you to consider the more important and economically critical issues. The best and most efficient use of everyone's time will result in the ultimate benefit to MINET and to the cities. That's basically my report, but I wanted to give it in that fashion to give you the opportunity, if you're so inclined, to take that into the discussion agenda.
I'd like to speak to that real quickly. From a perspective of the City of Independence, our number one goal is to see us get to the place where we are above ground. We're not paying into this anymore, and that means that any way that you want to explore revenue generation from other sources is our number one priority. So we're looking for ways for MINET. We're not looking for ways. We're hoping that ways are being explored for MINET to look for new revenue sources, because we understand from all the reports we've heard that where we've been going for the last umpty-ump years is not gonna get us there, like Ken said. We're gonna go over the cliff if we're not careful. So that's our number one goal, is to see those revenue generating resource or opportunities explored fully through the finance committee, bring them to the board, let's look at them, let's get them going, and start making money in other ways, like you're talking about.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think presentations in the past to the board are pretty convincing that we have peaked within our market area, and that this market area is not going to sustain MINET on into the future. So my personal opinion is we have to expand. We have to get new clients, and to do that we need to expand our service area. And so what you're doing is, in my mind, exactly what needs to be done.
Service area or services.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't catch it either.
Service
Service area or
services.
services. Or combination.
Footprint and products.
Right.
Products, yeah.
And I'll throw one. I think the easy one is if you can just hook somebody up and make more money, everybody's supportive of that. Where the discussion changes when you start putting risk into the equation, and I think that's what we have to manage. And I can see certain areas where some of the frankly kind of no-brainer ones are turnkeys. Staff could just flip those and take care of it. The interesting different things we'd want probably finance committee in there one way or another analyzing. Then it's a question of what kind of needs to come to the board to agree to, and then potentially even the city councils, because you have to remember, that the cities back everything that we do. And just a scenario that I would look at where you'd have a risk attached to it is, say, somebody says, hey, we'd like to use your service, and you say, okay, we look at it, and we have to drop in, $300,000 in hardware to get that done. And then they say, we will give you a guaranteed one-year contract of $50,000, but we really want to use you for a long time. Then that's when you start going, because some of these things could actually boomerang on us. It could actually make it worse if we don't. So there's a question there of either we clamp that's where we need to have some discussion about what these things look like. And the tough thing is we have no idea what these things look like. So I can't talk really accurately to it. But we need to have kind of a hierarchy of yeah, those are fine, either don't touch those at all, and then you can have a zone of, those are kind of iffy, and then who needs to be involved in that discussion to make a decision? Because in some cases, even for you and your staff, I wouldn't want you necessarily in a position where you come to us and say, this is going to be great. And then it isn't, because then we're going to have a discussion with you.
I don't like those kind of things.
I didn't fear you would. So you might as well let us get involved, and then we can get yelled at too.
And what I'm, there was a broad question there, and I think y'all probably interpreted it, but as we shove this thing down into the funnel, we internally have established a pretty definitive decision-making tree by which we can quickly shove something in the front end of the goose and see what it looks like when it comes out the back. Is it gold or is it brown, right? And we only want to deal with the gold ones that come out the back. We have a finance committee that brings a level of expertise to dissect these things, excuse me, to make a conservative recommendation back to the board. What we don't know, be it internal to staff or finance committee, which is supposed to be doing that type of thing, I believe, at your direction, is where is the horse? I don't know where to place it on this cart. Is it in front of the cart? Is it in the middle of the cart? Is it behind the cart? Because you just self-said, if you as a board have no appetite for us to be wandering down this, or it's going to be something that you feel is a promise with no return, which you're sick and tired of dealing with, I get it. We need to know, and we're asking the board, where's the horse go in this picture? Do we bring the ideas to you first? You go, yes, no, maybe. We take them back to the finance committee. They tell us what information to provide them on it, and we do, and then the finance committee comes back to us. How do you want this to flow?
Can I ask a question?
Sure. my time, so I guess I get 6.
I guess the question is, we had like 2 comments, and it was, oh, we've got all this money we've got to pay, and we want to pay it back. I would have thought, I would think, what a great opportunity. Let's see what we can do to make Independence and Monmouth and the university outstanding compared to any city in the United States, okay? And at the same time, pay back this thing. In other words, it's not one thing to pay it back. One thing to pay it back, hell, anybody can do that. You can figure out a way and get it done. But what about maximizing the benefit to this area? I think that's what we need. And I don't know that anybody will ever disagree with it, but if you focus on just paying back the $200,000 or whatever the hell, $400,000 a year, you're going to miss opportunities. That's not to say that you can incur more debt to get there, but you may have to incur a little bit, but you may also have to delay some of the payments. But I think the opportunity is just tremendous. Way more than just paying back that debt.
I think if you take our initial comments about how do we get the money paid back, get to even ground, you're seeing one point of the whole issue that we look at. I mean, as a city, I think Monmouth and Independence are both looking at this as a great opportunity. That's number one. We're seeing the changes in development kinds of things going on in the city that are happening because of MINET. We don't want to lose that advantage over other cities. So I think we're in it for the long haul. I mean, that's not the issue. But our concern is that our constituents want to see some return on investment that is tangible to them, not just opportunity. I mean, we show them lots of opportunity, they go, that doesn't affect me. You know, I live in the air park, that doesn't affect me. So we look at those kinds of, we're trying to meet the needs of the majority of our constituents. We know there are always going to be some that will never be able to satisfy. That's just going to happen. And there are some that don't care. But our long-term goal is to see the growth, to see the opportunity rise up and kind of grab everybody and go, wow, I didn't know we were doing this. And secondarily, it's make sure that we don't care about cash cow. We just care about return. You know, that we see it continue, that people see, well, we see this as, you know, these kinds of debts are being well managed, but the opportunity is the overarching
Yeah, I think
the overarching need.
I live in the airport also, and I hear them bitch, you know, but then we're all old out there, and we all bitch. Yeah, I know where you're. I know where you live. But you know what the point is? I never hear them bitch about the service they get when it's working right. There are certain, and you know, they're not complaining about the cost per se. So I think that this is a tremendous opportunity. It's just a tremendous opportunity. We need to maximize the opportunity. And boy, I mean, for WU and just for the whole thing, it's just a great opportunity.
My first meeting was last month, and the presentation by Sean Irvine, I thought was really exciting. And he was looking at what are the possibilities with MINET, and then your new IT director, and I forgot his name. Brian. He's got some really exciting ideas, and it's a new product. It's not expanding footprint necessarily. So I think what I heard last week was exactly what you talked about, Ken. I'm really excited about the future of MINET.
I'm excited about the future that MINET's going to bring to Monmouth and Independence and the area, and maybe we throw in Dallas in it. I don't care, but it just got some great potential. That's the thing. Internet is the thing of the present and the future. And to be on the leading edge of it, to be on the leading edge, this is Independence and Monmouth on the leading edge. I don't know. I grew up in Salem, and I never considered Monmouth and Independence being on the leading edge of anything, but I do on this factor. This is amazing.
Well, and my tendency is to agree. We've been hearing that for 13 years, and only recently I shouldn't say that, it's difficult to quantify what that great deal has been. It's been a drain on city resources. Now, so I think we're all interested in really pushing this thing forward, and I think that clearly it's the future. In order to be able to run a little faster, you gotta have some oxygen. To get oxygen, you gotta get above water. And we've been below water for a long time.
You're right, that's true.
And so I concur. However, you know, and at some point we're gonna talk about, you know, Paul Evans' concepts. I'd like to talk to Paul to see what the image or the vision was at that time, because it hasn't come to fruition yet. And so the question is, how do we get there? And that's some of the things that you're talking about, Don. I mean, how do we maximize this great resource that we have?
We're past the point of early development, which said, if you build it, they will come.
Right.
Forget it.
Right.
We built it. Now what are you going to do with it? And that's what Don's brought is, let's figure out, where do we go from here? How much can we expand? How many opportunities can we bring in and tie through MINET into the communities? And that's what makes it worthwhile. That's what makes it staying the course worthwhile for us.
Well, you know, for 2 years, I'm going to be very blunt here. For 2 years, MINET and staff has been busting its hump to make itself stable, to clean up waste, and to be as efficient as they possibly can, to be as customer acquisition aggressive as we possibly can. And you know what? God damn it, we succeeded at every last damn bit of it. And it's been hard. We are now to the point where, as I said, we can take care of the day-to-day business of MINET, and I would hope to shout that you can see that we're doing that, and we're doing it well. Whether or not I'm not saying we're paying all the debt. The numbers don't work with what we have to deal with to pay all the debt. It's just, you can't make it work. So now I'm saying to you, board, I need you discussing at board meetings what you just discussed for the last 10 minutes, so that we can walk out of here with direction to take to ourselves and to our committee to get MINET to the success that it can be, to the positive opportunity that it is, rather than the negative drain that it has been. That ain't gonna go away, so let's find the only logical solution. And that's why I respectfully ask you to ask yourselves as a board, what are your goals and what is your process and procedure you want to follow? Identify that so we can fit ourselves into it.
Well, I think at this point, I think we've given you a pretty good understanding that we want some progress in the area of acquisition, and how that acquisition comes about. I think we need to have an idea of what the opportunities are out there, and maybe to the point where you can come to the board for an executive session to discuss possible contracts with clients and that sort of thing.
Some of this does need to be discussed in executive session, because quite frankly, none of us want our competitors knowing what we're doing.
That's right.
Where we can avoid it.
So I know we can go to executive for contracts, but I think if we sit around in an open meeting and spitball, just like you say, our competitors are going to hear what our plans are.
I think on Mike's comment, this is, initial conversation we had last week, and then it's happening here. We're setting up an entire new pathway. This is something we have not done before. We have not gone out to other companies. And so we need to figure out all those things. We need to figure out who needs to look at it. We need authorities, who can authorize something. The legal side of it, if it's something that needs to come to the board. Can that be done in executive session because it's a contract? If it can't, but then we really think the board needs to take a crack at that. What alternatives are there? Is it a subcommittee? But I think we need to have an idea of what we're dealing with, and like I said, then packaging that with what risk is involved, so we can figure out where to plug things in. We've got lots of bits and pieces that are floating right now. We need it all kind of laid out. And like even with some of the things you have there, you could make those generic in a discussion. You don't put names on them. It's funny, economic development, they love to put full names on things. They have Project Delta, Project Phoenix, Project Unicorn, whatever the idea is. But you can just say, just right here, if you can just give us an idea, we've got this type of data expansion, a cloud storage, possibility of something. And then put some basic parameters on those, and then that would give us a feel for, what we're potentially is dealing with. And then I think where we come in real clearly is, like I said, if it's pretty easy, we can just attach something on, we make money, then just go do that to your heart's content. But it's where we start getting into, we have to invest money, which could then affect, money available for debt. It could defer some other option. If we're taking a risk, then we need to figure out how that fits into everything. So I think we've got bits and pieces here, but we need to all have this down really into a package.
MINET lit will be 10 years this coming May or something like that. I think that's when it first started services. And it was a different world at that time. And Ken's comments about 78% of a certain age group now don't have a landline. Back then, that was going to be one of the products that
one of your primary
products. Right. Video. My kids think I'm stupid for having cable television. Why don't you have just streaming video? I mean, that's what they do. They pay
Well, I can recall some comments from board members 10 years ago that video was a cash cow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, drive around and look at all the antennas, to Ken's point, on houses, and it's going up, I think he said 10%. So I think that gives, that you can say that management, to keep that line flat, has done a lot of, I mean, that's credit to you. Credit to the management of MINET, credit to the staff to keep that line flat, because you're losing voice and video, I would assume, badly. So that says the market is
and margin in both.
And margin in both. So that says that the market is in data and getting that out. And yeah, the market in both. I think that was, I think Tom said the $300,000 was because of cost of video and stuff like that, the difference in materials and services. So, and I know you're paying a lot more for ESPN and MTV and all that. It's going up and up and up. So credit to the management for keeping that line flat, to be real honest.
Yeah, it's good. And just on Greg's point, what we're dealing with though is that we've had set up MINET, it's going to work, it's going to make money. Oh, I need to fuse a little bit more money. Well, we'll be okay. It wasn't. Then we need to do the big one, the double down, which was the debt restructure. Okay, we do this, it's a guarantee. There's just no way that it won't work. And then here's where we are. So with a lot of things kind of shifted, here's where we are. But I think out in this, what we need to be diligent about going into new service areas is you have a lot of people going, MINET doesn't work. It doesn't make enough money. That's a problem. You guys don't seem to know what you're doing. And then we say, hey, we're going to start offering new services. A reasonable person, constituents out there, are going to go, what? So I think we need to do a darn good job vetting and making sure where we're going and having the board saying, yeah, this is a good one. We got a little bit of a risk, but we think it's reasonable. Because it's a lot harder to, well, let's just say we run over to Dallas and try to take care of Dallas. We end up losing a whole bunch of money. That's hard to explain. When it's our own people and we brought something new and unique here with the benefits, you can fudge that one a little bit. If we go outside to serve somebody else and we miss, that's out, and you can get past that one. So that's where we need to do a good job. But I think it's all risk management. What's our tolerance level? And there might be times that we might need to go, even the board's a little bit concerned, and we might want to run it back to the councils and say, hey, this is what it's looking like, but here's the range, here's the low line, and here's the high line, and there's a gap in there. It's called the delta, and you guys okay with that? And just to make sure, because remember, the cities are always the backer.
Well, a couple things I thought about was execution, and we've talked about different service areas, we've talked about different services, and I know that a number of years ago, several $100,000 was put in for equipment, which is now broken, being phased out, with the hopes of selling other services. So we need to see some execution, and then also it's just that risk level, and it's understanding where that risk level is at. And nobody on the board knows, as well as you and staff, of what MINET can do. So when you talk about, oh, we can provide the service, staff's gonna know, oh, we can do that, no problem, versus, oh, we need to have some money. And so that's why it's hard for the board to say, do specifically these things, because we can't tell you what your system can do at what risk levels. We need you that input from you.
What I think I'm asking, if I could attempt to boil it down, is I'm asking you to think, I want to make it clear that MINET as a staff, and especially myself, is exceedingly interested in receiving the input from the experience that you, as the board of directors, MINET, bring to the table. And I'm not blowing smoke up your skirts by saying that. We want it, we're thirsty for it. What I'm asking is that if you would consider hopefully we've proven ourselves enough at this point that we can get away from dealing with all this peripheral stuff that we've been dealing with for 2 years, and get our board meetings to where we get through the necessary reports as quickly as possible, and the lion's share of the meeting is having discussions like we're having right now, so that we walk out of here with clear guidance. Just the other day, Mike Lodge, and I'm going to call you out by name, said to me, the board has 2 responsibilities. That's to give you guidance and make sure you're not stealing. I want the guidance, and if you think I'm stealing from you, fire me right now. Because that's what I do to one of my employees, if they were stealing.
Is there a motion?
There's a review.
And that's true. That's what a board of directors does.
Very good.
It preserves the assets of the company and it gives guidance to the company.
Well, and we don't ask us to initiate new programs for you, because we don't know that. We don't know what those are.
No, I agree, John.
And so we've had, maybe it's coming later, but there's been discussion on the purchase service model. There's been discussion on footprint expansion to Dallas, Falls City, and all of that. There's been discussion about the bolt-ons or the new services. In my mind, and the degree to which some of this information is proprietary or confidential, you can launder that to the point where it's, what is the value of the purchase service model? I'm curious to know. If we do expand our footprint to Falls City, Dallas, other parts of Polk County, what's the infrastructure cost? Right. What's that going to cost us? Who pays it? And what kind of a market penetration can we anticipate in a brand new area relative to the Hillsborough study and other things? I mean, because that's not cheap. You just don't dig a ditch and lay it down and there you go. Given that, what are the impacts on staff and staff expansion? I mean, a grant writer. We need to fund a grant writer. How much money do we need to get in grants and how much is available? I mean, if we're going to try to fund this with grants going to Dallas, and it's, I don't even know, $10 million? Or $5 million, $1 million, I got no clue. And once you guys are certified smart in that area, or
well, I'm not, but the team is.
The team is. It was the collective
you. You knew that,
not the individual you, the collective you. And are there grants available from whom? And what are our possibilities of being successful on that? I mean, I don't want to just say, well, we're going to hire a grant writer, and then they go out and look for grants. We need to know whether there's any, what the chance of return is. That's part of the risk that Scott's talking about. So in answer to your, from my perspective, the answer to your question would be, you, because you're in the industry, come up with ideas that are successful other places or might be easily adapted to MINET, and sort of the cost-benefit analysis. Now, I understand that that's going to take a little bit of staff time to generate that, But where else is it gonna come from? That's sort of a rhetorical question, Don. But.
You know, Mark and I were talking just the other day when the customers bought, quit selling. Weren't we? You bought, I'm gonna quit selling you. I'm going to assume that going forward, that half of this meeting time is going to be available for us to have discussions about where MINET needs to go so that I can take it to staff, take it to committee, and bring it back for a final report on it. And we will bring at next meeting for that discussion what you just very well delineated, and Marilyn, I'm counting on you to have it down.
Well, that's my idea.
Well, every month we're doing less in this follow-up section, and every month the less that we're doing is that minutia stuff. So I think we're moving towards where you.
I think that's the big picture is yes. I think as far as just the board meeting where we're spending our time on, yes, we want to get to our basic oversight. So we want to check the financials, any trends, things going on with current service, what's going on there. Sure. You got problems with hardware or something, there's that, but then we'd like to carve out more time for bigger discussions and having these discussions or setting parameters for how we approach programs. And so, yeah, I think we've been, we've obviously been very distracted for a year plus on not big picture things that actually could help MINET.
I don't see anything about your policy manual in there anymore.
Yeah.
Which is good.
That's awesome. I did want to discuss font.
In paper color, poundage.
So, but I would like to get us to there, and I think you got some good fodder here, so then we can evolve some of these discussions. And I think we're as a board, we can set parameters for if you are looking for something, here's some things in the box you want to check off your due diligence items, and then just knowing what then we need to figure out. We're not going to have it all down perfect the first time because it's new territory, but who looks at it, who kind of makes a recommendation. John brings up a good point I wanted to call out, was let's say that your staff right now is maxed out just running the operation. And do you need a lead out person that frankly is fishing and going to all these various people? If you don't have the time to even find these things, vet them, then that's a discussion point again. Then we go, okay, then you go, well, if I can hire someone for $80,000, but I think I can flip the $150,000 in revenue based on that, then you go, then you might try it. And then if we go that route and frankly it doesn't work for a couple of years, I might have to rethink that. And it's the same as the grant writer discussion. There's all sorts of cities that have grant writers that don't bring very much money. Or foundation work. You get the foundation person that doesn't make much money for the nonprofit or whatever. And you have to kind of look at that and go,
Well, then I guess to hopefully get bought so I couldn't quit selling, I love that. Then the action I would like on my report is that we at MINET would appreciate the board's endorsement by consensus of this methodology and move forward.
Yeah, I think as far as the board structure getting there, I think everyone seems to be okay on that. And one thing I would throw out, kind of a different iteration on things, is getting to all these authority, that's a focused discussion. And even kind of initial potential, that'd be reasonable fodder for a work session if we separate off an evening or a Saturday or a something, and then you can just focus on that. And then you guys can help us with that without having to worry about giving you reports and your financials and that kind of stuff. So is that, everybody game time? I think that'd be the way to do it, because we're doing something completely new and different.
Right.
I think that requires a little bit of, just to focus on that and kind of get there, so.
Well, I think all of us have some ideas about what is possible out there, but as a board, I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with us giving you guidance to go in that direction. But as individuals, I would hope that everybody here has chatted with you about their ideas on opportunities.
Yeah, and I'd reiterate that too, kind of what David said earlier too, is that I can't give you any direction on any of those because I don't even know what they are.
Yeah, that's what
I don't have an iota of information on it.
I don't know what I don't know. So
we're better reacting than creating.
Yeah, right.
So we need some
that kind of
information
cuts to
react
the
to.
chase, doesn't it?
Right. Well, that's it. I mean, hell, that's out of. I mean, I'm in deep water when it comes to, tech opportunities. I can react to one with some time to consider it and so forth, but I can't initiate.
Well, with your consensus, which I believe we just received, we will be prepared at the next board meeting to provide you some items to react to, and we'll have them in your hands ahead of schedule.
Excellent.
But Don, you're not saying that at that time, you'll be asking for their approval of the big picture?
I'm looking
It's more of an
for that.
update, and yeah, go for it. Or, no, here's a question.
This
we
is
have.
worth looking into.
Or it might be, we like that idea, send it to the finance group to let them gnaw on it a little bit.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sort of a sorting process.
We don't have to, it doesn't have to be one process, it can be, like you said, it can be alternative.
Sure.
Yeah, I like that.
And I think where I think what you can do with these is, I think what would be helpful for me is very, just one paragraph type stuff. Here's an opportunity, we would provide X service, we would have to build this, do this, adjust this, affect staff time, just a real simple summary. Don't put any names on it, so we don't get into contractual issues, we're not, flagging who we might be talking to, but just to give us a picture of what things we could do. That'd be like, in a city sense, if somebody said, like neither city has a formal recreation program. And if a counselor said, well, what would a recreation program look like? Then staff would say, well, you could have this, and you start saying, what that might look like. So I think if you take the things you're already working on and just do some really simple summaries with no names attached, that would give us an idea of what you're looking at, implications.
And also with scenarios, the conservative, optimistic, and most likely, and
Yeah.
costs associated and benefits associated, easy stuff. I mean,
Yeah, and I think generally speaking, I could see those as that big on a page for each one. Opportunity. Well, we can set up a subcommittee for that. We can put the shred-o-mat.
And I think we have a number of tools that we've been building over the last couple of months.
Well, yeah, quite frankly, that whole decision
To prep for
template
this.
has a lot of the criteria that you would want to see up front. It covers the risk, it covers your capability. How do you differentiate from a competitor? I mean, all the kind of ingredients that you kind of want to look at and take into consideration before you took the next steps. You basically spend a whole lot of time putting a full-fledged business plan and model together, and it would either get you to a initial go-no-go point. So I think, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and just what Mark said, I think we're looking to act like a business. Any business that's going in a new direction, what they would do.
Yep.
We want that same process.
Right.
When, there was a big one, it was interesting, the other day, General Electric is getting out of appliances. They said, God, our industry, we're moving into, aviation and technology in various places, and so they said, they went through and they said, yeah, we can lop off that, we can move this direction, that makes sense. And obviously, somebody didn't just walk into the president's office and say, hey.
Yeah.
He still hasn't picked up the hammer.
Can't lift it.
Can't lift it.
It doesn't have to,
That
he's
was
a
a big
programmer.
hammer. So, if I was wearing another hat and came into your office and said, hey, what would it cost to get, and you mentioned this earlier, wireless service to Dallas? Could you give me a quote on that?
At that setting, no, but I could have it
Right, no.
relatively
I'm
quickly.
just saying.
No, I have done that and got some feedback from Don on providing Dallas with
Network.
where they're not necessarily wireless, but, and it was foot per mile, or dollars per foot, rather, and some of it can be pretty horrendous.
Yeah, and just a quick one, that we need to kind of move on a little bit. With Dallas, they've always approached it, they were more than happy for us to pay for everything to come to Dallas, and then their customers would be happy to sign up with us.
So the cost of the
we've looked at them
partnership
back and
falls
said, how about you
fully on
guys
us?
pay for
Right.
everything? And then,
how about we get a grant
so
How about the
and have
state pay for it?
have the state of Oregon pay
that's
for it?
That's the gap. There's a way to fill the
Or the federal
gap.
government,
Well, even better.
USDA will maybe have grant writers.
So we probably need to pop along a little bit to get through the agenda. Is everybody good at this point? Are you good?
I am, thank you very much, Board.
All right. So, we proceed along. Number 5 is discussion agenda. Sounds like we're discussing things. Is there anything else that needs to go there? Okay, so on to the action item. We got the GM review. We're actually a little bit behind on where we are, so I think we just need to talk a process to get the evaluation done. That one, I happened to see, was in here. Typically what we've done, we've had 1 or 2 people volunteer to lead the process. The board members fill out the form. hand it to whoever's coordinating, they consolidate it all, and then when we're ready, we go over it, and then we bring in the general manager and say, here's how we rated you. So we need to do that. And probably prompt.
You want to have that for the next meeting?
Do you want to send a due date for the reviews so that those two people have time to get ready?
Yeah,
and
so
have
so
them
if
done by
we
the
had,
next
if
board
there's somebody that
meeting?
wanted to step up to do that, and then, yeah, it'd be a timing, then they could say, yeah, I need it by this time, so then they can compile and we can be ready by the board meeting. Is that reasonable? Think we could get that done in a month? I would think.
I think we could. Just compiling them all.
It is. It's going through, so. Anybody want to do the process?
I'll do it.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay. So you send an email out to everybody, saying I need your form by January 8th or whatever you think you need.
Okay.
And
Well, we don't have a date set for the next board meeting, I don't think either.
Well, I think it'd be.
Are we gonna do the third week still, fourth week?
Third Thursday.
Third Thursday.
Didn't we bump back to the, this is.
We did for the, we bumped to
Just for
the
the
third
holidays.
because of Thanksgiving and Christmas,
Normally
we
the
could
fourth,
go to
We're
the
running
fourth.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Right.
So that'd be.
like a month and a half, so that's
Yep.
fine.
Yep, so if you said you're.
So I will get an email out to all the board members to ask for the input on this evaluation form, and I'll give you a due date.
Do the 28th.
Is this the form you want to continue to use?
I think so.
Yeah,
That'd be good.
so we used last year,
Yeah,
right?
and then, electronic version, do you guys have an electronic version? No, obviously you printed this. So, why don't you send that to
28th.
David? And then you can send out the form with the email, and we'll close the loop on that. All right.
How do people feel about like doing like a private survey monkey or something like that? Where it's all these and you just go through and you just. Is that doable?
Do you have to put all those on, or can you just download that, or how does that work on SurveyMonkey?
I can figure out a way to do it, but I mean, I don't, it'd probably be easier than you guys having to download it, fill it out, return it, or figure out a way to edit it in your Word document, return it, that way you can just go to a web page and you just do all this.
Oh, that's SurveyMonkey.
I'm game if you want to try to see if you can format.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
Okay, very good. Then we got some follow-up from prior meetings. We had the IGA and the policies documents, and the policy document was just kind of starting to build some policies, and Jerry and I worked on that, and that's something we can just bring to you and take a look at. The one that requires more direction is the IGA needed a couple tweaks, and that would require legal time. We would need to have legal to do that, come up with a product for us, then we would have to send that back to the two city councils and say the signatory on the IGA. They're pretty simple. When Jerry and I went over those, it was just the secretary treasurer position was, and we weren't fully describing how debt really works, the types of debt we can take on in different ways that we do that. So they're pretty narrow. I don't think it would take too much. I think it'd be fine with the two cities, but if we're gonna go that route, our first step would be to have our Cable Houston attorney do those drafts for us.
So don't we want to give them something? Or I don't think we just want to pick up the phone call and say, give us some ideas.
Oh, right, yeah.
Well, you had the ideas already.
The documents already
Yeah.
in
We just wanted
existence,
in
we just
legal
want them to
ease.
upgrade it.
Yes,
But,
yep, and have it in the right place and have it all clean.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what attorney are you? Are you looking to use our attorney?
Yeah.
Okay. And just to be clear.
The other alternative, if we want, the other way to go with it is that it's an actual IBGA between the two cities. We could have one of the city's attorneys do that.
Sounds cheaper.
But here's my
They're
question
all
is if MINET's attorney does it, then are both the cities gonna want their attorneys to review it? And we're spending $3X we ought to spend. I gotta ask the question.
Oh, they will, absolutely. Our attorneys will be reviewing it, yeah.
So
There's no such thing as
Is that
somebody
going
else
to be
draft
on
something.
MINET's dime?
No, I think
Okay.
if the MINET attorney developed the initial language, then it would go to the two cities, and then we would go through our normal process to have that looked at. So I think the cleanest way, more than likely, is to have the MINET attorney do the first draft.
And then
But it could go the other way, you really could pick one of the two
Our
cities.
attorney's on retainer, so when we send them something, they bill us X month per hour.
Yeah, ours is the same way.
Yeah.
So either you pick a city attorney, or you go to the MINET attorney first.
Attorney first,
I think that seems cleaner, because it affects both sides.
and then the city will do their due diligence, it's good to have extra set eyes.
Right. I think that works. So,
that's consensus.
Yes, I'd actually like a motion that we engage Cable Houston to develop a language to modify the.
So moved.
I'd like to rephrase that.
Please.
I ask that we engage the MINET attorney, not necessarily Cable Houston.
Since we don't have a contract.
We don't have a contract with Cable
That's
Houston.
right.
Okay. Good, sounds reasonable.
Catch.
So why don't we say it's actually a motion from Mike Lodge.
So moved.
Second.
John Kerry, second. Anything else? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Move forward on that, and I will work to get the basic language to not Cable Houston. Then the next one up was looks like emergency board subcommittee meeting schedule variations. Is that something you want to?
It's in the minutes from the November meeting.
And I think the board subcommittee,
This fee, I think it is.
yeah, and I think that one has a couple variations. One would be is if we end up with, when we figure out how we're
Page 3,
analyzing,
item E,
contracting, we might
second
need to have a
page.
separate group. I think that would also play in potentially as if we rotated to like quarterly meetings or just thinner meetings, you know, every other month, whatever it is, then we would need to have some mechanism to get there. So I think where we left it though, as I recall, without looking at the minutes again, I think we left it at the moment with things going on, we think we wanted to meet monthly for the time being. So I don't think there's a lot of need to.
It's easier to cancel than.
Yeah, I think at some point it could evolve, and then I think that would probably be a ripe discussion, but I think for the time being, we're meeting monthly, so then we don't need to worry about the emergency board subcommittee. And the variations,
If I'm correct, is the January meeting supposed to be back in Independence now?
that was on number 8.
Oh,
So is that consensus just to keep going with monthly, and at that point, then we really don't have any variations or anything? So, okay,
Okay.
let's close out, so monthly meetings. And
Then we
then,
won't bring that back to the table.
no, I think, yeah, I think at some point when we evolve, we say, hey, maybe we can back it off, then we
too
can.
many number 8s.
Then that'd be a right discussion at that point. Next on there was the Paul Evans letter, and without spending a bunch of time looking at it, is there a summary? Does anyone want to talk through what is this? Support MINET.
Well, I'm pulling from memory, but when this was first brought, when the board first reviewed this letter from Paul, which I see is May 18th. By the way, that's my birthday.
Cool.
The discussion was, we ought not to completely ignore this, and I think that was kind of the consensus that
Yeah.
we need to respond to this. It was assigned to then official board member Dave Klein to touch base with Paul Evans, and to my knowledge, I don't know that that has occurred.
I think it did.
Yeah,
I
it
think, because he had twofold concerns. It was, he didn't like what he was hearing in the paper about how we were operating, and then the other one was, hey, can I help in any way? And at that point, I think David did contact him, and then just nothing happened.
The session was going on.
Yeah, it was when they were busy, and I think just.
Too many
it just wasn't-
conflicts.
It wasn't right, so.
It'd be nice to invite Mr. Evans, but a question in my mind, would we want that to be any discussions with him in an open meeting, or do we want to talk to him individually, or how does he feel about this?
Well, I think if it's like helping, like grants, et cetera, other things, that's completely open.
Okay.
I'm not too sure there'd be really anything
Well,
else.
some of the stuff in his letter we discussed today about the future direction that you're
Yeah.
going to talk about next month.
Yeah.
But there's also, he talked about talking possible legislative concepts for future consideration. In other words, is there any legislation that we would like to propose through Paul that might help MINET? Like, get automatic grants or something like that.
0% under your.
Or get some of the OLCC money?
There you go.
Well, and we obviously got a short session coming up, but some of this could be a good discussion when we have that bigger discussion about these opportunities, where we want to go. Once I think we're better shape, because right now, if we say, hey, would you help us if something came up, of course, it's going to say yes. If we can give them something more concrete.
I think we should have an agenda for our meeting.
Yeah, I think we want to be really ready to have a meeting with him if we're
And
going to do that.
I don't even know what things could help legislatively, but I think that's something to consider. Maybe he's got some ideas too, but I think.
We're talking about inviting him to the work session or post-work session?
Maybe the work session.
Or a little premature.
I would generally say post, but then the other interesting one is that the session's coming up.
Mhm.
Yeah, the March session is
Yeah.
coming up.
So then there's a little push-pull there, so. But you know what, that's gonna be a short session. He's not gonna have anything developed by that. I think we'd be better off getting our act
And
together
generally,
and then having
if you don't have it
discussion.
in the hopper now, it's not gonna get in,
Yeah,
so.
it's work party for us doing that.
Behind
So I think we'd be better off getting our act together, seeing what we could actually, and then engage. in.
Okay.
What we might look at, though, is what is in the hopper, and should we ask for support for any legislation that's being introduced in March?
I guess that could just be a simple inquiry.
Yeah.
Just, hey, Paul, is anything that might affect MINET rattling
I
around?
move that we have Greg call in and talk to him.
No
Okay.
problem. I owe him a call, I already told him.
Yeah, so maybe
I
a
think
two-part,
that's a
just,
good
is there anything
idea.
going on right now? And you could let him know that we're having some good discussions,
Yeah.
and when we evolve where we're headed, we definitely want to engage.
Good. I hate to call Paul, though, because he always wants me to volunteer to do something.
You can throw me under that
Okay.
if you want to.
I thought I heard you volunteer to call Paul.
Yeah, that's right. Good point, Kevin.
Is that are we nixing the motion and making this a voluntary,
Yeah, it's a voluntary.
thing?
Yeah, I didn't say it was volunteer, I just hate calling him. I know what the conversation.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. Good direction to have.
Yes, sir.
Great make contact. Okay, that's excellent. Number D, new contractual agreement with Chad Stokes.
Let me start this and end this in about one sentence. I'm not comfortable. I still have a number of questions regarding his proposed contract to us. You have it there.
Okay.
I'm not comfortable signing yet until I have the opportunity to clarify some things with Chad as to who he's representing, who could be conflict of interest, that types of things. Since this has gone on so many years on kind of a gentleman's agreement, it's time to get this clear and cut. So
And
that's-
If you're not ready.
I read the first one under professional undertaking, it says, will endeavor to assist
Yeah.
MINET in a professional manner. They're gonna try to assist us in a professional manner? How about they just, how about they do it?
Well, that's why
Just like
I'm
you
not
would
comfortable
assist.
signing it yet, sir.
Let's hold.
That's
on.
in the first one. I don't know what else.
Okay, sound good?
So you go
Hold
ahead.
hold until Don's ready.
Yes.
And I would make a note, which is actually an applicable process note for almost anything we do. If we're gonna be approving this agreement, get it to us in advance so we can look at it.
Okay, that's an issue I want to ask. Is this attorney is this board a client or is MINET a client? Because if MINET is a client, the signature on that contract should be Don's. I know that there were some discussions earlier where Mr. Stokes rendered an opinion that he was a board employee. And I'm not comfortable with that at all.
I'll be MINET's attorney.
Yeah.
I'm pretty darn certain who pays the bill.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's an interesting question. This falls in that area. We still got some gray areas on kind of what the board approves and what staff. Typically speaking, I'm just talking city-wise, yeah, the council actually approves an attorney. But in our case, it's more direct. We report directly and get reviewed.
Well, I guess it's more business.
In a more business-like sense, it would just be staff requiring services that they need. So that's an open question.
Yeah, because, it's Don's pocketbook that pays for this guy, and I think that Don should be a part of the process when this board wants advice from this attorney. Because I think it's unfair to MINET to throw surprise bills on him.
Yeah, and I think it's two-part, because the board has needs for attorney services when we're dealing with process issue, executive sessions, things that we're dealing with.
I think with the board.
And then we just need someone that can help out with the business side of the operation too.
Certainly, but then it gives us the obligation to loop Don in during that discussion.
Yeah, I think it'd be reasonable to have the board take a look at it and approve it. I think it's a pretty important thing to have the attorney on it. So I guess there's two paths. We could say, Don, figure it out, sign an agreement with somebody, or we could have it come back to the board for approval.
Well, I guess we have to disagree, because I think that.
Oh, no, I'm just looking for a discussion.
I
Yeah,
got
just,
you.
all
All right.
where are people? I think the board should approve the contract.
Well, I think that the board should review the contract, but it's MINET's attorney, but I think the contract should come to us too. Because I agree that we have an amount of interest in who it is, but at the same time. we have to not just use them all the time, like Mike's saying.
And I think we would come to a consensus. I think if you're comfortable with the services, then we'll be fine too.
Yeah.
I go back to municipal, and the board approves 2 contracts, the city attorney and yours. I think that's sounded too. So, and a judge, I think, if they get a judge, so. But that doesn't say who they work for, it's just that the council or board approves the contract.
So it sounds like the board would like to approve this.
But Don can,
Yeah.
Don
When
can
it's
do
ready.
he
Oh,
can
absolutely. I think
do the work.
when you're ready, you bring it back
Yeah.
and then we'll approve it.
Is this a consensus or a vote?
Or a motion?
Well, we want your recommendation.
Okay, got it. Right, we got that, Marilyn? Yeah.
Good. Okay. Last item on there, next meeting, which we're gonna get back on our 4th Thursday.
January 28th.
Okay. And then the discussion point was instead of going back and forth every 6 months, we want to just like stick to Henry Hill.
And that's on there because it was offered by Buzz as a consistent place to go.
Right.
You'd have to fight the train again.
No, Ben, not us.
That's true.
We're safe.
It's a good meeting space.
Yes, it
It
is.
is very nice, yeah.
Good size.
Yeah, Frank, I don't care, I'll go
size room.
wherever the board wants to go.
Throw the tables, and got some chairs for guests and whoever.
Yeah, it's a good size space.
I don't see any real reason to rotate from one city to the next. If it's a good space, why, I mean,
Protects us against dementia and not remembering where the meeting is.
Thanks a lot.
Or like when the 2 councils were looking at doing a joint meeting, the spot was actually the curb between the fire station and Dr. Knoll's clinic. They could just stand on the curb pretty much.
And just FYI, the next joint council meeting is coming up in March.
March, good, that's good weather time to be out there.
Yeah.
That'll work.
warmer rain.
So does that sound good to go with Henry Hill, at least
Yeah.
for 2016, and
Yeah,
we can
figure it out from there.
Great, so, okay. Anything else for the bad of the order?
Who's going to red dome?
I always thought it was the new board member.
And out of whose budget?
It has, not just one time.
Prior practice.
Yeah.
Prior practice.
I'm sorry I brought it up.
So anything else? Hearing none, motion to adjourn.
I move.
Second. Yeah, okay, you're adjourned. Cool. Look at that, 9:30, look at that.
Happy holidays.
God.
Same to you. Yes, yes, yes.